Well, I'm back from Bermuda with some interesting disembarkation stories to tell. My next cruise has been canceled, and we're going to talk about that and a lot more stuff coming up right now. Hey cruisers, welcome to CruiseReport.com. This edition, September 6th, 2021. Just wanted to update you on what's going on. I just last week got back in town from Bermuda, disembarking Viking Orion on their Bermuda Escapes cruise. I was by myself. I have a complete review video out on YouTube. I'll put a link up in the corner of this video if you want to take a look at that. I also did a review of the penthouse veranda stateroom that I occupied on that cruise. So if you're interested in Viking Ocean and you want to see the review of that, please take a look. When I got off the ship on day of disembarkation, I did write about this in my blog, but I thought it might be worth talking about in a video because I think it's going to impact cruising in the future. It has to do with dealing with the airlines. Now, Viking had us disembarking, I believe, about 11:20, our group. Our flights weren't until 3 in the afternoon. We were booked on United Airlines, and these flights were booked through Viking's air department. And my itinerary was to fly from Bermuda to Newark, New Jersey, and then connect to a flight to fly from there to DFW. And I was supposed to get home around 9 o'clock at night. Well, I'm sitting in the lobby of the Viking Orion waiting to get off the ship. It's about 10 o'clock, 10:15. And I thought, just for the heck of it, I'm going to go ahead and download the app from United Airlines because I don't normally fly on United Airlines. I have the American app, I have the Delta app, but I didn't have the United app. So I went ahead and downloaded the United Airlines app, and when I logged in using my frequent flyer number and my password, I get these messages start popping up saying your itinerary's been changed. And, here it is, an hour and 15 minutes before I get off the ship. Come to find out, they had canceled the flight from Newark to DFW. And they had rerouted me on a new flight from Newark to Houston. And then I would be in Houston overnight and not get on a Houston-Dallas flight until like 7:30 or 8 o'clock the next morning. So I'm going to, their plan was for me to get in Houston about 10 o'clock at night. Of course, all the flights are always delayed, so it could be midnight, who knows. And then to get up early in the morning and get to the airport to be on a flight to get to Dallas. In other words, I would have to probably sleep in the airport. Not too excited about that. So the first thing I did is I went up to the guest services desk and I had one of the ladies there try to help me with this. And there's really not much she could do. It's hard to get through to anybody at the airlines. When you do, the phone connections aren't good. You can't really understand anything they have to say. And I'm just not too keen on spending the night in the Houston airport. So all of this is happening within a short window of time before I have to get off the ship and take the shuttle to the airport for the flight from Bermuda to Newark. So the stress is starting. So I get on my phone on the Delta app, and I'm not the only one, by the way. There's several people on the ship that are taking this flight from Newark to Dallas. So a lot of people got their flights canceled or rerouted, depending on where their final destination is. I don't know what their plans were. So I get on my phone on the Delta app, and I'm just looking to see, are there any other flights from Newark to Dallas? Sure enough, Delta has one that was about, I think we get into Newark about 4 o'clock or 4:30, and this flight was like at 6 o'clock, 6 something. So I had plenty of time to make the connection. Now at that time, I thought I was going to have to go through customs in Newark, which can take 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how many flights come in, when you get there. I was unaware, nobody made me aware of the fact that U.S. Customs actually takes place in Bermuda. before you get on the plane. There's an agreement between the Bermuda government and TSA, the U.S. They have customs, immigration, all right there. So you don't have to go through customs in Newark. If I had known that, I might have been able to book an earlier flight because I would have had less, I wouldn't have needed so much time to make the connection. But nevertheless. So our flight from Bermuda to Newark, now I have a flight on Delta that I booked and paid for myself. I'm just going to throw away those other flights that United wanted to put me on because I don't want to get up, be at an airport all night long. So I figure I'm just going to eat that. And I decided to go ahead and book and pay for this other flight on Delta from Newark to DFW. Now, the problem is I need to be in Newark on time to make that flight because, number one, I'm going to have to change terminals. I still have to go to baggage claim to get my bag. And then I'm going to have to check that bag with Delta because United will not check the bag all the way through to DFW because it's on a different airline and on a completely different PNR. So I'm concerned when I'm sitting at the airport in Bermuda, I want to make sure this flight gets out and gets away on time, gets into Newark on time. Otherwise, if I'm late and I miss my Delta flight, I just have to eat that one too. Delta doesn't care if I show up late. They just figure I didn't show up at the airport or something. They would have no way to know. So, stress. So I'm sitting at the Bermuda airport and it takes them forever to board the plane. The flight is about 30 minutes late taking off. And at the same time, the little weather screen for Newark shows thunderstorms. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, going to be a weather delay. So nevertheless, we did get into Newark about 20 minutes late. And we sit on the tarmac, and we're sitting there because there's lightning in the area. They're not allowing the planes to get to the gate because all the planes have been delayed taking off, so all the gates are full, so they don't have a gate for us. So we're just sitting on the tarmac. And I'm sitting here looking at my watch. Am I going to make my connection? Am I going to have time to get to baggage claim? Am I going to be able to make this flight on Delta? There was a gentleman sitting behind me on this flight that was in the exact same situation I was. In fact, he actually works for Viking. He was on the same flight, same situation. His flight got canceled, and he also actually booked the same flight I did on Delta going to Atlanta. I rebooked a flight from Newark to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to DFW, and I would still get in that night, maybe around midnight. I forgot to mention that. Well, he had done the exact same thing. I know he booked the flight to Atlanta. I'm not sure where he went from there on. So he and I together, we met up at the baggage claim there in Newark. We finally got to the gate. We finally got off. We have about an hour now to make our connection. But this is all going through your head. So we rush to baggage claim. Takes 20, 30 minutes to get the luggage, of course. We get the luggage, and now we're trying to figure out the Newark airport, which is probably the worst airport in the world, I guess. I don't know. I've been to some pretty bad airports. It's as bad as any I've been to. So the airports in the United States are really bad. So we're trying to find how do we get from the United terminal to the Delta terminal so that we can check our bag, check in for the flight, get our boarding pass, get onto the gate, blah, blah, blah. We finally do. We make it. We get to the gate, and of course, that flight's delayed. 30 minutes. So now I'm sitting at the gate thinking, okay, now I've got my flight from Newark to Atlanta, and I only have an hour and 30 minutes to make my connection in Atlanta for the flight to Dallas. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to miss that flight, and then I'm just going to end up spending the night at the Atlanta airport. All I did was trade a night at Houston airport for a night at Atlanta. But this is all going through my head. I'm not, So anyway, 30 minutes late boarding. We get on the plane in Newark, and even after we get on board the plane, it sits there for another 30 minutes, 45 minutes, at least, I'd say 85 to 90 degrees in the cabin. No air conditioning because the APU on the plane wasn't working. And we're just all about to die. So you're sitting there in this, I'm stressed out because I'm worried I'm not going to make this flight, this connection in Atlanta. Now we're about 45 minutes late. And we're just sitting there. Finally, we take off. And the pilot comes on and says he can make up some of the time in the air, so we probably be 30 minutes late getting in, which means I'll have an hour to make my connection in Atlanta for the flight to Dallas. But all this is going through my head. Got an hour. I have to change terminals in Atlanta, so will I have time to change terminals? I don't have to worry about luggage. That pretty much is covered, but I'm just thinking. So, and all through the whole day, not only all the stress of worrying about this, but you're constantly being told by the flight attendants, make sure you wear your mask. You got to have it over the nose and mouth. If you don't, it's a federal offense. You go to prison for life. You never get to fly again on any airline in the world. It's just, all this constant berating about the mask. And so, but nevertheless, we get to Atlanta. I have an hour to make my connection. I make my connection. I'm at the gate in Atlanta to get to Dallas, and that flight's delayed as well. 30 minutes late taking off. But I got on, and I did get home. I think I got home about 12:45, before 1 a.m. So the moral to this story is, between this Viking Orion trip and our Silver Sea, Silver Moon cruise, which was in Greece, we had a total of 4, they're all connecting flights. There's a lot of different flights, but we had to go to Greece, come home from Greece, go to Bermuda, come home from Bermuda. Of those 4 legs, 3 of them had delays or cancellations, and lots of stress. On the way to Bermuda, on American Airlines, we sat at DFW for an hour before that flight took off, and I was worried the whole time I wasn't going to make my connection in Charleston to get to Bermuda. Yes, I made it, but I had the whole time I'm on the plane, I'm worrying that I'm not going to make it. In fact, there were a lot of people on that flight going to the cruise or going to Bermuda, and they just happened to pull into the gate in Charleston right next to the gate where the flight was leaving for Bermuda. I think they may have done that on purpose because there were so many people on that flight trying to make that Bermuda flight, and we got there like 10 minutes before our Bermuda flight started to board. So it's not that we didn't make it, it's that the stress of all this stuff, plus the additional cost I had to bear for the flight coming home from Bermuda because I didn't want to spend the night at an airport. Because I don't think United, they never said anything about paying for a hotel. And like I say, if the flight's late, gets in at midnight, and you got to get up, what time do you have to get to the airport for a 7:30 a.m. flight? Would you get 2 hours sleep? The reason I point all this out, along with the fact that now the cruise lines have started to go into this whole thing about 2 days to get a COVID test instead of 3 days. It's going to make it extremely uncomfortable and difficult to do. There are going to be a lot of people that are going to miss their cruise because they didn't get their test results back from their COVID test in time. The moral to this story is I'm not sure how many baby boomers, now the younger generation will probably put up with this because they put up with a lot of things. But we grew up, people in my generation, the baby boomer generation, we grew up at a time where we remember what it was like to make a telephone call where you could actually hear the person on the other end and you didn't have to worry about the call dropping. This new generation, they're used to calls dropping. They've never had a good telephone, so they don't even know what it's like. Well, the same is true of travel. They'll grow up wearing masks. They'll grow up dealing with hassles at airports, and maybe they'll adapt to this and it won't matter so much to them. But for the baby boomers, I'm not so sure how many of us are going to be willing to go through this stress to travel. And I don't know when or if this is ever going to end. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the cruise lines may want to consider this. Right now, they're following this CDC guideline that went from 3-day testing window to a 2-day testing window. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do it. And they have to be careful not to make it too stressful on the baby boomers to travel, because the cruise industry was built on the back of the baby boomers. We're still a huge segment of the travel community. And if you alienate 50% of the baby boomers, or a high percentage of baby boomers, it's going to affect the entire industry. So things are going to have to change for this to become tenable. Now, on other news, while just a day or two before I got off Viking Orion, I got an email from Uncruise letting me know that my cruise on the Wilderness Adventure in Alaska, Ricky and I were going to Alaska, that our stateroom had been canceled. We were invited guests as media, and Uncruise decided to clear up some cabins for COVID, for quarantine purposes, and if you're a media guest, you're the first one out. The problem is, I'd already paid for our airfare, so we did have to pay for our own air. And now comes the interesting question about travel insurance, because we did purchase travel insurance, and I have filed a claim with my insurance company to see to get reimbursed for at least a portion of that air. I didn't have enough insurance, I don't think, to cover the whole cost, but it'd cover maybe 75% of it. So we're waiting to see, and I will update you later to let you know if and I don't want to mention the company's name right now, but once this is resolved one way or the other, I will let you know the company name and let you know, good or bad, how that turns out. So I've always been a big believer in travel insurance. We always have it on all of our trips, and we did on this one. So right now that Alaska cruise is off. We're not going, and we are working on some other projects for the future. So anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please hit the like button, click the little thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps our YouTube rankings. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, become a part of our community here. And we will see you on the next Cruise Report. And until then, smooth sailing.